Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Hello, my name is Andy Melody. I'm a comic book artist for my own self-interests, and Hubert Art Productions is the name of my publishing company. Yeah, so the page one to page done. Because making comics, it is pretty much that simple. Basically, start off like anything else with an idea, and you know, an idea of your story, character, setting, and your what's it going to be. Keeping in mind your your target demographic. Excuse me. And then with the team, it doesn't even have to be a team really. But if you got friends that are better artists than you or writers, and you work together, and that helps. Or here's an idea of what the pages setup can be. These are bordered panels, and this is one of mine for a story I called The Demonstration, which these are floating panels, and you see the smoke is coming up and partly showing up here, so you can really be as creative as you want with it. There are, reference images are great for poses and getting your anatomy right. And copying a pose is not cheating or stealing anything, poses or poses. And I have a book up here, all action poses of male and female characters to help you get that going, depending on what you're looking for. This is a sketch I did of two existing comic book characters, something like that. It's my own creation because it doesn't exist in the comic world, but you can't, it's copyrighted. So that's called fan art. Fan art is not usable if you're selling your works. But in reimagining, like this is what I did with the characters of the Wizard of Oz for a story I started called The Emerald Asylum. And it's, different background. And as you can see, they don't look anything like the original characters. So that's free to go ahead and use. And then back to the poses I was talking about, all referenced from the images, either in that book or other comic books. You can't steal a pose because everybody in the world is capable of moving. So things like that are just, you don't have to worry about copyright infringement or anything like that. And if you're not sure, how to do it yourself, that's what reference images are for. They're great tools and help. Same thing with materials. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I've got some examples of what I use. I bought like the really expensive $90 marker, like for one marker. And I still to this day, I prefer, my favorite thing is a number 2 pencil. You can get 20 of them for $1. It's not a big deal. If you want to color, again, up to you. You can use just basic Crayola color pencils, markers, a ballpoint pen. And all these things are fairly inexpensive and available at your local dollar store. Save maybe the light board. And the light board is great for if you don't want to ruin the original piece. Let's say you drew a character, or you're working with somebody, they are really proud of that drawing. You don't want to mess it up by putting ink and marker all over it. So Lightboard basically lets you trace that. You put the original down, flip the switch, it shines a bright light through it, and then you can just go over it with a marker or pens and whatever other tools you want to do. And that way, if you mess up, you're good because you still got the original copy. You don't have to worry about, I've run into a lot of times where I draw something like that is awesome. And I try to draw it again and it never comes back the right way. I'm like, all right, I don't know what happened there. So that's the one thing I would recommend. And there, again, you could get a light board at Michael's or a Hobby Lobby online for, basic one for $20. Not a big deal. And here's the industry standard on size is 11 by 17, and you can buy professional art boards to work on. But sometimes that's a little tricky, to adjust for those sizes, and they would tell you no more than 5 panels per page. But it's, again, that's just industry standard. you're doing this for you and your friends. You do many panels as you want. Yeah, and then the different types, comic book, and I've always heard about graphic novels. So a comic book is standard 22 pages from start to finish. And then you got serial, which is an ongoing, or even a mini series, which in the upper left-hand corner where the issue number is usually at, it'll say one of X, one of 4 or whatever, how many you want to do. So you can write a big story that goes on, or just a one shot, which is start to finish. That's the one book. And it's a good way to start is with one shots, because then you get comfortable with the method. The graphic novel is basically the same thing. There's different variations out there in terms, anthology, collection of short stories or mini series all into one volume. I've seen them where I wrote illustrative here. It's like a regular book with occasional image, or they'll start a chapter with a full page artwork, and then to give you an idea, if you're not imagining it in your head, of what is taking place. But again, there's still a single work. So start to finish, pretty easy there. Here's a copy of the splash pages that I've done. This one is for a story called The Watcher. And then this is actually an unfinished cover page for a story called Arc. But it's the same principle. You splash is an entire page, no border, no panel. And again, it's usually, this is your team. You have several artists working cohesively, and you can have 1 to 2 writers as well, or you can do it all yourself. So, that helps. And if you're not a good artist, you've got stick figures and bubble people. And I think it's great. think of, like, you've all seen a flip book. It's usually just a mini little stick figure guy, but it can still portray motion and movement and tell a story just as well as any detailed image can. And then this, I like the bubble people idea, because even professionals will use this to convey like a crowd, so they don't spend all day on each individual person in the background. So your art skills really, whether you're a professional or a doodler, it doesn't matter. It can make it happen either way. And then here's the cover I was talking about, some of the pages and the inside, and even with, it's not this, I don't have the full book laid out, but you can see just from what's here, it basically, there's a start and there's the end, and it's 4 pages. Went through that kind of fast. I don't know if anybody's got questions about it or the process, if I went too fast, or I can go back to the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Coloring process is something, I'll get back to that page here. Not a lot of detail. These are called flats. This was done digitally. And then you can add in, they start with the flats and then you highlight and add shadow. And if you're not really sure on where the light source is coming from, you can always just replicate that on your desk, with a lamp or a flashlight, even on a physical, to see where that comes from. And so this is the basic pencil cover of 1. And again, just a number 2 pencil, nothing fancy or special. And then I do it. So I do it myself. I write my stories. Usually it's up maybe color. I don't like to work in color. I'm not very good at it. I have a friend of mine that does that. So instead of this entire daunting looking team to assemble, save time, make your own, do it yourself. Industry standards. Doesn't have to be that big. Do anything like these. It's got pre-made borders along the edges. Start to finish that. That's just a little comic. It's one example of that. Same here. Now we can go look. It's got multiple panels already laid out. So if you're not sure how you want it to look, it's a little guide that can help. Because I work on index cards a lot to get started. And again, you can buy a pack of over 100 at the dollar store. So what's that page? Let me see. And these were all done on index cards. And on the back, where the lines are, is I write the story or the general idea of what's going to be on that page, or even the character's background itself. And you can kind of go, do it as you go. If you don't have a complete story, where you have a general idea, outline that, and then
It should come back. Yeah.
you can just outline that and go from there.
When you develop a comic, do you typically have a character that you start with, or do you have a story and then develop the characters in the story?
I've done it both ways. Sometimes I'll have like a character idea, or I'll just have a story idea and then build the world and the characters around the story, or vice versa. And then, what's here, like I said, it's like the Wizard of Oz, but reimagined. It's my own adaptation. And it actually came about, and this is 100% true. I was at work one day, and me and a buddy of mine were just talking, and found a picture of fan art of something, and I was like, you know what? I love looking at these fan art things. I go, but nobody has ever done a Wizard of Oz the right way. And I was like, I'm going to be the one that has to do it, and because I see them all, and it's always the same kind of thing. It's, you've got Dorothy is usually inappropriate, and so I'm like, okay, I get it. It made Dorothy look like a streetwalker. It's been done, enough. And the Tin Man's usually not very impressive either. So my story, I gave them all a new background, and Dorothy's actually a little kid in this world, and I didn't sketch her out yet, but the Tin Man is more like cyborg, kind of experimental, not just a goofy looking can or what a lot of other artists do. And I researched first to make sure that the story, the original story, was public domain, which means the copyright expired. So that way I don't have to worry about anybody coming at me, trying to sue me later on if I ever went public with this and I sold it. So a lot of that information is free. You just search up whatever, original story you want to change, make your own, and you'll find out whether or not it's still under copyright. With coloring, you can do it digitally, or if you don't have, the good enough machine or the right size scanners or whatever, you can just do it on your paper itself, and you're done. It doesn't have to meet the industry standards. That's up to you, really. And that's what I like about doing it. I've got stories, maybe the book is only 15 pages instead of 22. But I've got some that go over. You know, it depends on the story you want to tell, the characters you want to implement, and the style. This is more of like a sci-fi horror style that I went with The Wizard of Oz. That was just the idea I had that I thought would be interesting. It hasn't really been done. And I looked through countless pages of Wizard of Oz fan art on Google, and I didn't find anything I didn't quite like it. So I'm like, all right, it's different. You know, somebody other than myself might appreciate that. You know, especially if you're a fan of The Wizard of Oz or Wicked. I mean, I love those stories. Okay. All done, board at work on the back of an index card. Again, just using poses as a reference and make them my own characters. You get to try out different styles, you know, outfits and weapons, what, you know, so it gives you time to play, you know, and it's an idea. All kinds of, perfect example, got a pack of 8 of these at the dollar store. And pack of 10 of these liners for doing ink work over the pencil was $80. I barely ever use it. Have the tools of the pros, but I don't need them. Save my money. Here's just a little notepad that I had in front of me at work one day and write down ideas, doing it like a storyboard method. Right, this one, that one, just so I can, you know, get my thoughts out on paper before I try to just jump into it and it doesn't look like I want it to, and then I get frustrated or anything like that. And if you look through my kit, it's mostly #2 pencils. I just can't go wrong. Price is right, comes out fairly good on paper, and any paper. But yeah, so it's fairly straightforward and simple process. Doesn't have to be a daunting, arduous task that takes you years and costs you hundreds and thousands of dollars in material.
Have you always drawn? Like when you were younger, were you drawing?
Yes, I've been drawing since I was a little kid, and my kids draw all the time.
Yeah.
But there are how to, draw books, and starting with poses and tracing over it, that's perfectly fine. You're not stealing anything. You practice, tracing over a character in your favorite comic or other media, and then add your own clothes and whatever else, weaponry, and now it's your character, because you can't steal the pose. It's poses. Like this one, I was flipping through a magazine, and it was a character from a video game, but it was the way he was standing that I thought was really cool. And I'm like, so I drew my angel character based off of that as a reference, just to get proportion and sizing right. And with that proportion and things like that, there is an industry standard. They'll tell you most heroes are 8 heads tall. So however big the head of your character is, stack them up. Or the villain is 10 to 11 heads tall, because they're all to make them more scary and threatening. And you can do that, or you can say, I don't want my guy to be that tall. I want my character to be like an average Joe. And I don't do superheroes. I have, but I'm not. I love superheroes. I've got my Wolverine shirt on, big X-Men fan, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be anything. You can write a story about a mechanic that can telepathically communicate with machines. And then I was scratching out the other day and I drew this mushroom guy. And my daughter was like, that's really cool. And I was like, yeah. And it was kind of creepy because it was like a zombie mushroom idea that I had in my head. So I was like, all right, I can make a more child-friendly story of this forest that's overrun with zombie mushrooms. And mushrooms are pretty easy to draw. There's not a lot to a mushroom, you get the stem and the cap. So I can make that take me maybe 5 minutes. The idea came out I would do a warm-up page, like to get my hand going. I just make random shapes and squiggles just to loosen up before I get into a drawing, and I see something sometimes in the scratches, and that's what I did with that. I was like, okay, this kind of looks like a mushroom. Maybe if I add a little more to it, and hey, I got a new story idea. Just right there on the scratch page in the middle of the night doing nothing. Watching TV with my kids. It really is a start to finish process. Start with one shots and again, art style. You don't have to be an amazing artist to make a fun comic. Did I hit something wrong here?
Is there anything, I've got several kids here in the audience. Do any of you guys like to draw? Yeah, all of you pretty much. Any of you? Yeah. Any advice you give to kids? I know you said your own kids draw too, but anything you can tell them to kind of help spark some creativity?
Oh, yeah, just keep drawing, practice makes perfect. We've all heard that old cliche. And, when I started, when I was a kid, I would take one of my X-Men comics and find a page of a character that I liked, that I thought looked really good, and just try to draw that on my own. So something like that, and you eventually come up with your own character, maybe on accident, like I did with my mushrooms. So, or on purpose, you could trace over a picture to get like my scary monster guy or whatever you want. And okay, you got the shape down, and then just add your own to it. And there you go, you got your own character. And again, paneling and things like that, there's a million references out there, even real, you might have a comic book in your own collection, and you can make based off of that, or you can make it however you want. It doesn't have to be that industry standard, it's yours. Own it, make it your own. I like to work with folding panels a lot, just because I think it's something different. And it doesn't constrict me to have to fit the artwork into a little space that big. And then the story, you can map it out on the back of the drawing if you want, or on a separate, and then it could be notebook paper, it could be a napkin. I mean, a lot of things started off on napkins. Harry Potter started off. J.K. Rowling started writing that on a napkin in a bar, and became one of the biggest franchises ever. So it doesn't matter the material, really. You can waste your money on a $90 pen that you don't use, like I did, or marker sets that I haven't seen the light of day, and I don't even know how long. I mean, I've tested them all out, and I feel, to what I like, if I feel comfortable with it, I like the way it comes out on paper. But for the most part, it's all, nickel and dime dollar sort of stuff, things I've even found, like walking by, you see something, somebody dropped their pencil. Oh, all right, cool. Where's your pencil? Do a lot with that. In my sketchbooks, I've got sketchbooks all over the house. This one, a lot of scribbles on the pages, nothing, and then the kids get to them, write stuff down, but nothing definitive in the sketchbook, just scribbled scratches. Yeah, there's a lot of how to draw books, which when I was younger, I would pick up from the library. And they drove me nuts because it's like, all right, start off with the oval, and then you turn the page, and it's a masterpiece. It's just done. Show me how to do it. I can't, how do you turn this circle into this amazing piece of art? I mean, some are better than others, but so that's another way, you know, to help you hone the craft, your art style, and get your own style. Like I said, I would always mimic the comic books that I got. And so I kind of developed more of a Marvel, DC art style. But that's what I liked. And I try now to do other styles. I never drew animals or landscapes because characters were what I liked the most. But you spend all that time only working on characters and say, all right, yeah, that's great, but can you draw a dog? And it comes out, you know, horrible. It's like, because I had no practice drawing dogs. So now I have like specific sketchbooks of just one thing sometimes. And even those are about yay big, just plain paper inside from the Dollar Tree down the street. And I'm like, that's for like trees and landscapes. This one's for hands and feet are a big thing in the art world. Major artists like Rob Liefeld. I see you laughing, sir. Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He came up with one of my favorite Marvel characters ever. Like he's a professional artist for Marvel for years. And there's a collection online of the worst Rob Liefeld drawings that made it to publication. There's like 40 of them. And the proportions are so bad. And a lot of artists hide hands and feet because they're really hard to draw and make it look right. So it's a big joke in the art community about drawing hands and feet. And so I have sketchbooks just to practice hands and feet, eyes. Like my son, my older son, he loves to do portraits. I don't like drawing face. So in the beginning, a lot of my characters have masks or their hair is covering part of their face. So it was just simple, but that's a dead giveaway that you can't do that. You always, if your characters are always in a mask or their hands are hidden by Captain America's shield or whatever it is, it's like, okay, maybe this guy can't draw hands and feet. Can't draw faces. That's you learn your strengths and weaknesses, and then you can either stick to it, do what you know, or branch out and practice. I mean, I still practice hands and feet, especially in poses, because the way they bend is tricky. And it took me a really long time to be able to draw female characters, because I spent most of my time drawing male anatomy. So I've got that too. I use reference books for that all the time, just to get better at it. Practice. And I have had stories generated out of a character, or I had characters generated out of a story. So whichever pops in my head first, get the idea, whether that idea is the story or the character. Everything starts from the idea, right? I mean, think about it, a car, light bulb. Somebody had an idea. I was like, you know what? How can I make this happen? And again, your audience, like a lot of my stuff is more on the dark side. What I like to do, I have a one shot called The Demonstration. It's about this failed scientist who calls everybody in town. He's a joke of this town. And he's found a way to take out his revenge on these people by turning himself into like this werewolf monster guy. But he's locked them all in the auditorium where he's doing his presentation. And it goes from there. And again, like I said, it's kind of dark. I know there's kids that are going to hear it. So I didn't put any of those slides up, but again, he's just like a normal dude who failed at something and he just goes out and does his things. No, not superhero about it. I mean, a little Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, maybe, but it could be, and like Spider-Man. Everybody knows Spider-Man. Spider-Man's awesome. Stan Lee, the creator of Marvel and Spider-Man, said in an interview today, he got like shot down when he told them his idea of a teenager being a superhero. It was like that. Nobody wants that. That's a terrible idea, Stan. And he said, I love this idea. And his wife encouraged him, just do it, you know. If you fail, you fail. You know, you've got a bunch of other successes. So, and he did. He went with it and turned out to be huge. Everybody knows who Spider-Man is now. Whether you like him or you don't, you know who Spider-Man is. You know Peter Parker. It's so even if you've got people telling you it's terrible, you know, that's one person's opinion. There's billions of people in the world. You know, you never know. Somebody might like it. You're bound to find somebody. So, not a hard project. Idea, art, story, close. One shot. Practice doing one shot. Get into the groove of getting one shots down, and then you can take all those one shots and turn them into a series, or you can make an anthology, a collection of these one shots that you got. So it's really not an arduous or expensive task to make either a comic or a graphic novel. I've made graphic novels where the one method I was talking about is just like a splash page, story, splash page for the next chapter. And I mean, the story part for me takes the longest because I'm not, you know, you're writing and you gotta remember grammar and this and that. So I actually worked with a friend of mine who fancies himself a writer. I'm like, okay, you write, I draw. It's my comics. So that's a great idea. So I lucked out there. And then again, I went to high school with one of my best friends currently, who his art style is completely different than mine. He can't do what I do. I can't do what he does. But I have ideas sometimes. I'd like his style to be the imagery for my story. So I work with him for those projects. Most of it, I make it myself. I've got maybe 6 complete one shots. And one of those turned into a collaboration between me and my writer, because he had a character idea. And then we took my guy, the Hitman, and his Scott Creed, and we combined them into a new story working together called Arare, which is Latin for lose your way. So you start with anything, story, character, and you can branch into an ongoing series, and you have 1,000 issues, or you can just make it a one shot, however, you know, it goes. You inspire yourself sometimes. It's, you know, you're doodling and it's like, that's good. I like that. I'm gonna take this somewhere. Anybody, any questions or concerns? I'm out of time or not. You guys want to go? I got a few more minutes on it. Not, don't worry. This is what I'm here for. So.
I think it's funny that saying because the action comics is going on, they're like, okay, fine, give you your stupid kid character. Since the very last comic, because they're going out of business, fine, when they give it to you, and it turned out to be a success, and they made more money than they did,
Yeah.
and they felt bad. Oh my God, I can't believe we passed on this guy.
Yeah, that a lot of you know, back to my example of J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter, she was rejected over 30 times by publishers. So I bet they're kicking themselves after that. Like, we told this lady, no, this is a terrible idea, whatever. And then one guy was like, oh, let's do it. Let's jump on this. And everybody else says, man, we could have had gold here. That's the thing. A lot of people liked it or didn't. But there was at least one person who thought it was a great idea. And that's all it took for her. That one guy to be like, this is something. And it blew up to be giant. You know, and anything like that. Marvel, DC, Image, all these comic companies that are out there now. And that encouraged one of my favorites, Dark Horse, because they're an indie publisher. So like, you know, your average Joe was like, I want to be a comic book artist or writer. All right, here's your chance, you know. And they stray away a lot too from your standard Superman, you know, hero saves the girl kind of. It gets redundant after a while, at least for me. And then the hero teams, X-Men, the Avengers. I mean, that's how I got started. That was my bread and butter. But it doesn't have to be that cut and dry. You can, whatever you can think of, whether, you know, it's Iron Man, Batman, Joe. Who's Joe? I don't know. Joe is this guy now.
Do you take yours to publishers or you publish it yourself?
I'm a publisher myself. Yeah. There was, again, me and all this, most of my stuff, it took place at slow days at work. I was a mechanic, and if we didn't have a lot going on, I would just start Googling. My buddy, you know, that I worked with, he, you know, was like, man, that's cool. Do you mind if I write a story for that? You know, obviously it's my character, but do what you want. So I worked overnights too. So I don't know if half of it came just from sleep deprivation. You know, it's 3 a.m. I'm living on energy drinks and hope. And yeah, we came up with the idea. It was originally What's in the Box Comics. And it's from the movie Seven, with Kevin Spacey, Brad Pitt, that infamous scene. What's in the box? And so I don't know how it happened, but we just started saying it over and over and over. I was like, that's it. What's in the Box Comics? And then we talked about it and came up with the idea of, you know, all right, fever dark. Because everything's done, rushed, and in a panic, because we didn't know really what we were doing, and we had very little time between work and home. So then it's like, all right, well, you see it all the time. You know, this Productions presents, you know, this thing. So it's like, okay, we could keep What's in the Box under Fever Dark. And we had the idea, once we get it up and running, that's going to be us, you know, average Joe. You got an idea that's not too graphic. All right, you know, we'll review. You can submit it to us, and we'll put it up on the website, and mostly just digital comics to save costs. There's no overhead for that. You know, just scan it, you know, get all the pages in a row, upload it to the website, and you know, whatever, $2 or. And you download that, and now you have the issue, and you just keep up, you know, every so often we'll have a new issue coming out, or a fevered artist of the week where we'll highlight somebody else, you know, make theirs like the big deal. That's because that's what we are. We're just a couple of guys with an idea that want to make it. So why not make that open? Because I've tried submitting to major publishers. Like every once in a while they'll do like a contest, like Top Cow. I don't know if you're familiar with Top Cow, but I got to meet Mark Silvestri. He's one of my heroes, and he's an artist for Top Cow. He did work for Marvel and DC, and then him and one of his buddies branched off and started Image Comics, and that was great. But he, huge inspiration for me. And they do every year a talent hunt for both artists and writers. But they tell you right up front, it doesn't guarantee you a job with that. but I mean, it's a step in the right direction, for sure. So, I mean, using, you know, after you build your own, and then you get to test it against the pros, you know. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. That's the way it goes pretty much with anything. So, but you gotta take that chance. Like me being here today, thing came out in the mail, I'm flipping through and I saw that it was looking for panelists. And I go, why not, you know, never done this before. So I sent my thing in, you know, that I want to do it, and I didn't hear anything back for a while, and I completely forgot it was even a thing until I got a call from somebody here that was like, "Are you still interested?" I'm like, "Yeah, but what am I doing?" it was literally just, I don't know. It's been so long, I just considered it, you know, done deal. Like they moved on, but wasn't impressed with my stuff. So, and yeah, here I am. So, not getting paid anything. You know, everybody's like, "Oh, so it's just volunteer." I'm like, "Yeah, you know, meet somebody, you know, somebody remembers the goofy guy talking about comic books. All right." So couldn't hurt, you know, any exposure, networking, that'll help get this whole thing off the ground. And then with social media, you know, exposure is even easier now. You know, you can put, like I put my sketches up on my Instagram. That's pretty much the only reason I have Instagram, is just for my artwork. So people see, you know, the stuff that you're putting out, and then, you know, they'll follow you because they like your artwork, and then trying to, you know, you make a company, get your name, boom. Advertise Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you know, all these things that reach millions of people. Somebody's bound to take note and interest, and so again, makes it even easier for, you know, Joe Schmo to become Stan Lee eventually, you know, Mark Silvestri, any of the big names, Jim Lee, if you like Batman.
More questions? All right.
After you publish them, do you take them to comic stores and try to sell your,
That's a little more tricky. I've thought about it, but they want, you know, paperback, which is very expensive to print. So I figured my plan was start digital, grow a fan base, and then, you know, use that income to maybe do a small print, you know, and then offer that to any members of our website. And then, you know, the idea, we get more and more income, and it really doesn't, like I said, doesn't cost anything to make digital comics. So it's all income. So, and then use that to eventually try to do a print and get it in stores. And that's the biggest.
did you ever meet any of those guys on Amazing Comics that do Moonstone comics? They do, like, we were talking about public domain. They've done like Old Saint or Lone Ranger, although Dark Horse is not good. Yeah. Have you ever come in contact with those guys at all?
Not ringing a bell. I might have seen them at a Comic-Con here. or
It's
there.
Amazing Fantasy, books and comics. They ran, the owner of it has an imprint called Moonstone that
Yeah.
they release. They've done indie comics like Kolchak Night Soccer and stuff. They have their own imprint, and they've done published books. They've
Yeah,
got
you
like,
started out as a comic store, then just kept going.
yeah, they've got like 3 locations in the suburbs. I think Frankfurt,
Frankfurt's like.
yeah, Frankfurt,
I've been to that one.
Yeah,
I've been out there, but
the owner of the company runs the one in Lockport.
and I mean, it kills me. More and more brick and mortar shops are closing up.
Yeah.
With digital comics and movies coming out for everything, you know, instant streaming. I mean, you don't have to go to the theater anymore if you wait a week, it's gonna be on Netflix or some piracy thing, so either way, you know. And they're losing money doing that, and but they've got enough already, so. And I did though, I looked into getting like a booth at a Comic-Con, you know, getting like in the artist alley. It is expensive, but a lot less expensive than trying to run a store. So, but that's a good way too, for an indie guy to get, you know, noticed. Or you can sell, you know, if you do a small print, you can, you know, sell them there too, you know. Like even more exposure. Those things are huge. Like my son one, there's Lord knows how many people, you know, it's all bumping elbows everywhere.
I think the store, so people are walking so slowly, like, come on.
And yeah, people will stop to look at something, and you're like, I'm trying to get over there, like, I want to see that guy's stuff. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, it's still fun. I had a good time every time I go.
It's like San Diego Comic-Con, it's less comics, now it's more movies and TV.
Yeah, cosplay is a huge thing. I love it. It's great. And even I go to the Renaissance Fair up in Kenosha, and that's a riot too. I love it. See some really cool get-ups over there. Yeah. So that's, you know, exposure is easier and less expensive now with internet and even venues. I mean, here, me talking to you guys, I didn't have to pay to do this. I'm not getting paid to do this. It's just because this is what I'm passionate about. I love comic books. I've loved comic books since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. It's just what it is. Research is a big thing too, so you know you're not accidentally stealing anything, which happened to me in the beginning. It was originally called Seventh House Productions. Turns out there was a photography company in England called Seventh House Productions. So I was like, slim chance that, you know, it'll get caught, but on that off chance, I'm not having it. Because then let's say I do build a decent empire out of this, and then they sue and it all comes crashing down because of a simple oversight. I didn't look, you know, and then when I came up with what's in the box and Fevered Art, I researched, make sure there was no other thing in existence. It was
Right, there used to be a comic store years ago on the north side called Toontown, and Warner Brothers found out because they own DC Comics and
yeah.
Bugs Bunny and all that.
And that's it, you know, perfect example right there. It's, I don't think it was intentional. It probably wasn't, but it happened. Like if I came up with a character that had, you know, retractable claws coming out of his hands, you know, that's no. That's no go. Blatant copyright infringement there. But,
You know, if it's not really clear out of his hands, mechanism, singing out of it.
yeah, I mean, like the whole back and forth with Spider-Man. Sometimes the web comes from his body or it builds the web shooter. Like I don't know, the newest Spider-Man movie that came out,
Yeah.
and there was that whole thing between them. I thought that was hilarious. Because, and my son was like, well, Spider-Man, it always came out. I go, no. I go, in the comics, he built the web shooter.
Yep.
I go, that wasn't a thing. It wasn't part of him, which to me made more sense because he's Spider-Man. You know, he got the strength from, you know, the bite and everything, but yeah, he built the web shooter.
Yeah.
But when that's a small oversight that didn't bother me. They had it coming out of his body. So.
I thought it was funny when I was watching that movie, I heard a kid, why is there two Spider-Mans? It's not the Spider-Man, I don't know, go forget it, I'm just happy, yeah. That Spider-Man did this, that Spider-Man did that.
As a comic reader and follower of certain, like Spider-Man, I'm waiting as the movies are coming out. I'm like, there's a scene I know, and it's gonna kill me when I see it, and I don't want to. I think if you saw the movies or you read the comics, you know what I'm talking about. It was the same thing when HBO picked up Game of Thrones, the Song of Fire and Ice series from George R. R. Martin. I read those books. It was amazing. And so when it came out as a show, my interest is peaked, you know, I'm like, how are they gonna do this or that? And then I loved because it blew up and people on Facebook are talking about, oh my God, you know, did you see last night's episode, this and that? And then when the Red Wedding, and I knew it was coming because I had read the books, I'm like, they're gonna lose their minds.
Yeah.
And they did, it was great. I loved it. I went on Facebook after the episode aired and I was like, oh, this is glorious.
When I first heard about it, there's that, I think, oh, I heard about it, I never watched it. There's some of Jon Snow, I was on a movie, I was on a movie set. Oh, you heard about Jon Snow? Who? Wait, really? Because I was thinking of the hacker of Jon Snow, not the character Jon Snow.
Yeah,
Wait, you really did this? I can't know how he's not arrested by it. No, arrested by that. Oh, no, not that Jon Snow. This one. Oh.
All right, well, thank you so much.
thank you.
You guys have a good rest of the day, okay?
Thanks.
Thank you.